So this video is about the third era of federalism, which lasted from 1937 until technically present day, although there is a lot of talk in the political science community that we may have entered a new era of federalism in 2001. It is very challenging to judge situations politically as you live in them. Well, it is very challenging to judge them accurately, let's say that. And so that will be something that we will note later on. Are these actions since 2001 a fluke, or is this something that is a new pattern? So we decide to leave behind the concept of dual federalism because it was a disaster and it never actually worked. And so we abandoned the concept of dual federalism, the layer cake analogy from the second era of federalism, and decided to focus more on a cooperative style of federalism. And so instead of trying to separate, trying to work together where things make the most sense. And so you see the advent of joint programs. The New Deal programs were the first of those. Social Security is a very well-known joint program now. And programs are called joint programs because they are jointly created, jointly funded, administered, and determined. That means that there are levels at the federal level and at the state level. So jointly funded deals with taxes. So taxes come from both levels, both federal and state. Jointly administered means that you've got the administration at both levels. So if your grandma's Social Security deposit doesn't direct deposit like it's supposed to, she doesn't have to go all the way up to DC. She can just go to her local Social Security office and manage it there. And they're jointly determined, so decision making is done at both levels. So typically what this means is there are parameters set by the federal government, and states can decide where within those parameters they would like to work. And we see some shifts and some trends over time during this third era of federalism. We had federal grants increasing up to the 1970s. Since that time period, federal grants do still exist, but they have just grown less. They have grown fewer in number. And a grant is money that is sent to the states for a particular purpose. And a grant can be in one of two styles. It can be a block grant, which means it's sent for a broad purpose. So it could be money sent to the states for education, and the state can decide what to do with that money as befits the needs of the state. Or it can be categorical. A categorical grant is different from a block grant in that it is for something very specific. And so instead of a block grant, which might be for education, a categorical grant might be for something like middle school science technology. And that has to be spent by the state on that particular issue or that particular item. If not, then it must be returned to the federal government. And so we still have federal grants, both block and categorical, but they do not, they are not as numerous as they were up until the 1970s. This means that states have had to pick up some of the slack on spending when they had gotten accustomed to money coming in pretty regularly from the federal government. And so basically states did one of two things. They either raised taxes so that they could continue providing these services, or they eliminated those services. Southern states in particular went the latter route, and so we just don't have those options and those opportunities anymore. We have a lower tax rate and a lower tax base because of that. In the 90s, we went into this kind of golden era of politics. We had both parties working together for the good of the country. In the mid-90s, we had the Republican Revolution. You ended up with a large Republican majority in the House, and then you had a Democrat in the White House, and they were all more moderately aligned. President Clinton came up with this concept of Clintonian triangulation. And triangulation, the idea was that moderate legislation suits the largest number of people in the country because the public largely was moderate. We still are, we just hear a lot more from the fringes now. And so the idea was to basically draw a triangle. The bulk of the legislation would be written for the benefit of the center of the triangle. So most of the legislation would be for the center. There would be some legislation to the left and some legislation to the right, and that would comprise the different areas of the triangle. So there was a little bit for everybody. And with just a few exceptions, the government worked exceptionally well in the 90s. And so things were going quite well. Everybody was generally quite happy, and then our world changed. And so on September 11th, we had a terrorist attack that killed 3,000 Americans, and may have been a significant enough shift to start a new era of federalism. We have seen a couple of things since then. The two-party system, the Republicans and Democrats are still very firmly entrenched. Both have embraced big government. That's something that, depending on your stripe, will be viewed differently. Basically, Republicans, to put it in a nutshell, Republicans want to legislate the bedroom, and Democrats want to legislate the boardroom, but both are using large governmental systems to achieve their means in the last couple of decades. And you've seen a lot of fragmentation. Parties, the two major parties, are dealing with internal struggles, both of them, the Democrats with the moderate Democrats and the far left, and then the Republicans with the moderate Republicans and the far right. And so that's creating particular challenges for voters, as well as for legislation moving forward through Congress. We're seeing a lot of gridlock. So what will the future hold? We don't know. This current system of party fragmentation may continue, but the pendulum may swing from the edges where it is now back to the center like it was in the 90s. It should be interesting to wait and see.